taking 6 inches off. I don't want to, because of the way that this is set up, that's going to set the limit for where I put it. And so if I needed to cut any off once it's already on the mill, it would have to come off the big side, and I'd rather keep the big side and take off the small side to get more boards out of the big side. No two bandsaw companies are exactly alike in how they create their saws, but the general idea is that there's always going to be some kind of stopper like this. And because I'm just dumping this log onto here with the machine, and I'm not able to be out here kind of slowly guiding it, this is really important that this here stops the log from rolling off the other side. And this is going to stay as low as possible so the log can roll over it. Same thing over here. And this is about it. I'm basically going to just position the log so that it's as close to the saw blade over there as possible. I'm just going to roll it on. These will stop it, and then I'm going to use these to clamp it into place. So now I'm wanting to orient it so that it basically, the cuts I make are as efficient as possible. And what that means for me, because of the taper, because that end is so much bigger in diameter than this end, I want to try to rotate it so that it sits as flat as possible, which this particular trunk is kind of like an oval, so I'm going to have it like with its wide side horizontal rather than like an egg. It's going to kind of lay on its side. And then I'm going to probably try to lift up. Well, might not really need to. I got to think about this for a second. Study the shape. Kind of exactly the way it is probably going to make the most sense. The first cut that's made is basically flattening it out. But you have a choice of either starting at the height of the low side and just barely shaving any off of this, and then that'll continue out this way, and because this side's so much thicker, you're gonna end up with like a big chunk over here. So first of all, it's a question of like, do I want to make a few smaller pieces out of this side, or am I gonna just take one big chunk off? And I don't know what I would really do with smaller pieces there, so I think I'm just going to take the chunk. So a bandsaw mill is a really good investment if you have a land project and there's a budget for building and you want to avoid buying lumber. And lumber prices are just skyrocketing, and I don't really see that changing in the near future because the lumber industry is just not sustainable at all. And so one of these bandsaw mills costs between like 10 and 20 grand, depending on how nice of a machine you get and whether it's used or new. And so like, you know, if you're going to build a house, you're going to spend a lot more than that on lumber. And so if you're in an area where you have forests that you can selectively harvest from, and you've got the space for one of these machines, it's a really good investment. And it allows you to actually be a lot more creative with how you use the wood, because you can really cut things to any size you want. So these clamps are serving the purpose of keeping the log from rolling around, and everybody who ever uses one of these mills has to learn the hard way not to cut into them with the saw by accident. So I'll tell you, and I'll also say you're probably going to hit them at some point. Basically we have these shorter screws that we're sewing the edge together with, and that's the most important thing about this technique, is that you get really good connection between these boards. This is what turns two thin boards into one thick board where they're overlapping. Yeah, you can kind of get a sense for what the ceiling's going to look like now. Pretty cool. And I also always like to make sure that as we're going along, we take moments to step back and like look at how parallel they are to each other. Which this is looking good. We're just starting to kind of lay out what the shape of the roof is going to be. And as I was selecting rafters and putting them in place, I was doing my best to think about what kind of plane each rafter is going to create. But because of the nature of the round wood and what an odd shape the roof is, there's really no way of knowing until you actually have a board going across the rafters what kind of plane you've created. So that was the intention of what we were just doing, was to kind of just mock up what kind of a roof line those rafters are creating and get a sense of whether we need to add more rafters or if we can work with what's there. I learned this technique of using these thin slabs from my mentor, whose name is Sunray Kelly. Definitely look up his work, Sunray, K-E-L-L-E-Y. And it kind of allows you to just work with these really strange and dynamic shapes, and then you can actually get a surprising amount of bend out of these boards. And then once you've bent them and you've screwed them into place, you start bending more over them and laminating them all together. And then because this wood is still pretty green, what happens is as it dries in that bent shape, it actually holds its shape. And the wood basically just stays true to that curve after it's dried. So it doesn't work with wood that's already been cured, because if you try to bend it, it'll just crack. But this wood has like the perfect moisture content right now to be able to do this, and it also has cured a little bit, so we're not going to get as much of a surprise, because if you do it with completely green wood, sometimes you'll think that you got away with the curve, and then it'll start to crack a lot as it's drying. So it's good to work with stuff that's still got moisture content, but it's not completely